Hey everyone, so for a long time now, people have been arguing back and forth over who is going to kill Kaido. And a lot of us take it as a given that Kaido is going to die, largely based on how he was introduced as this unkillable creature. That was the most remarkable characteristic of Kaido that Oda chose to first highlight, that nothing could kill this man, not even Kaido himself. And not only could nothing kill him, but Kaido actually seems to want to die. So naturally, the assumption that came out of this was that, okay, by the end of the Kaido storyline, they will have to find a way to kill him. So the only question is, who's going to do it? And since then, we've had lots of arguments, some people saying Luffy will find a way to do it, others saying that Zoro will be picking up where Odin left off. Some people are even throwing out choices like, maybe Blackbeard is going to swoop in to take Kaido's devil fruit in the end and, kill him in the process. And I'm not going to waste time going through each one of those theories and debunking them, because the reality is that none of these candidates are really better or worse than each other at all, since Kaido is probably not going to die, period. No one is killing Kaido. Why do I say this? So the first thing we have to talk about is, why does Kaido want to die? Because it's not just that he's suicidal, there's a lot more to it than that. Kaido's death wish, to me, actually seems like a part of a much bigger overarching idea in One Piece. Death and how one ultimately goes out carries a tremendous amount of meaning in the One Piece world for two reasons. So first is this often repeated quote, that the weak do not get to choose how they die. Something very similar is mentioned even during Kaido's introduction, that the strong live and the weak die. We have Katakuri again telling Luffy during their fight that death is not something that people typically plan on. It is usually an unwanted circumstance, because the reality again is that the weak do not get to choose how they die. And of course, the One Piece world is filled with all sorts of superhumanly strong characters. It is a world of competition, survival of the fittest is a big part of it, and so on. So this idea that the weak do not get to choose how they die, and how death is typically an unwelcome, unplanned event for pretty much everyone, is something that is reiterated throughout the story. And on the surface, this is a straightforward idea, but when you think about it in the grander context of the series, how did the story begin? With the death of the strongest pirate who ever lived, the one they considered the king of the seas, who got to choose exactly how he died, and was able to go out in a manner that changed the world forever. The entire One Piece world is still living in the shadow of Gold Roger today, precisely because he went out on his own terms. As such, just as much as the weak cannot choose how they die, there is a rare greatness or power to an individual being able to actually choose when, where, and how they die. And this is something that is really overlooked about Luffy. And that even if he's never going to say something as blunt as law here, Luffy sure as hell believes that he will be the one to decide where he dies. This is an extremely important quote from him. And I'm not even going to go into what I believe happens to Luffy at the end of the series here, that's a whole other video, but the point is that this is an extremely important overarching idea of the story. That being able to choose your own death and go out on your terms is a testament to that character's greatness. So that's the first piece, right? That's the first implication we've repeatedly gotten, that the great ones are able to choose how they die. Now the second big point about death that has been stressed throughout the series is the memory or the legacy that your death leaves behind. So a lot of this goes back to the Hiruluk quote that we got early in the story, that a man dies only when they are forgotten. And as we saw, when Hiruluk died, the country did not forget him. Dalton remembered him, Chopper carried on his will, etc. But more importantly, this has been the case for many of the great characters throughout the series. It's not just a testament to your character that you are able to go out on your own terms, it's also a testament to your character to be able to go out in a way that you will never be forgotten, to achieve a sort of immortality through your death. So of course we saw this with Roger, who had a death that, as I said, still dictates the course of the world today. The entire One Piece world is living in the shadow of Roger's death, chasing his ghost. And if we bring this back to Kaido, we can just look at the two characters whose deaths he admired. So first was Odin. This is a really important observation by Kaido, that people are going to be talking about Odin and the way he died for years to come. And Odin says that even though he doesn't care if people forget about him or not, he still acknowledges the reality that he will go down as a story to accompany people's drinks for a long time. That is the power of a grand death. That's the power of going out on your own terms in a way that people will remember you. The weak don't get to choose how they die, but characters like Roger, like Odin, and like Luffy probably in the future, they have the power to go out in a way that leaves a legend behind, that makes sure that they don't really die. The second death that Kaido respected was Whitebeard's. You can say that here Whitebeard didn't quite go out on exactly as he would have liked, because of course he would have liked to have saved his son before he died. However, he died standing up, not a single scar of shame on his back, and most importantly, he went out declaring that One Piece exists, which was a victory in itself, based on the after effect it had on the world that is still talked about today. Not to mention, he had gone to Marineford, likely assuming that he was going to die there regardless, so from the moment he declared war on the world government, he had already gotten to choose the battle that he was going to die in, and he ultimately died in a great battle of his own creation. So yes, Whitebeard did go out on his own terms, and he died in a way that no one would forget. The simple proof being that even 2 years after Whitebeard's death, Kaido is still ruminating over it. Kaido is to this day jealous of what Whitebeard achieved, acknowledging that, Whitebeard did it right. Now, we could even speculate a little bit about Kaido's feelings towards Roger, though this is not confirmed yet, right? But we can speculate. We know that Odin's death was preceded by Roger's, which to this day, Roger's death is the most legendary death in the One Piece world, as it started the pirate era itself. It's entirely possible that this trend of Kaido being captivated with the idea of, dying right started first with Roger's death, then was reinforced with Odin's death, and finally became a sort of burning need for him with Whitebeard's death. And even though we know so little, you could also do some super speculative speculation about Rox, where perhaps it was the opposite, right? We know that Kaido was a subordinate of Rox, so he was part of the Rox's rise, and he was present at Rox's defeat at God Valley. And the fact that we know so little about Rox says a lot in itself, because even though he was probably, top 3 greatest pirates of all time, Rox is not a well-known name today in the One Piece world, and it took us 900 chapters to even hear about him. Right? Rox doesn't have a legacy that is known throughout the world. He has been forgotten by most people, and what's particularly interesting is that this incident of God Valley, this epic battle, is actually one that is shrouded in mystery, with no one really knowing what exactly happened there. So Rox, the greatest pirate before Roger, he was defeated there without anyone knowing exactly what went down, and subsequently, Rox was somewhat written out of the history books. So think about the stark contrast between Rox's end versus, Roger or Whitebeard. It's entirely possible that Kaido saw his captain, the strongest pirate at the time, have his legacy end without a trace, and that may have influenced him even before Roger's death. So it's possible that even though it hasn't been discussed yet, Rox and Roger's deaths could have planted the concept of the importance, the need to have a grand death in Kaido's head in the first place. But, regardless of whether or not those two characters' influences are true, at the very least we know that Whitebeard and Odin's deaths had a big impact on him. And we see that immediately after reflecting on Whitebeard's death, Kaido declares that he wants to start the greatest war the world has ever seen. So the picture that's starting to form of Kaido is basically that he has seen the power of a great death. This is what he craves. He envies people like Odin and Whitebeard because the way they died was the ultimate proof of their greatness. Kaido is supposed to be the strongest creature in the world, so in a world where it is a sign of weakness to not be able to go out on your own terms, this desire to be able to choose where he dies and to make sure it's something no one ever forgets, that no one ever forgets him, that has a tremendous amount of meaning behind it. So, all that is to say, the bottom line is that Kaido's desire for a big death is actually a natural extension of an idea that's been around for a long time in the story. It's just that he is the first character to really bring to the forefront of the story the significance that comes with how one dies, and what that says about you. We haven't gone in depth into Kaido's character yet, so it's still unclear what his, specific motivations are, whether he wants that grand death to prove his strength, as the strong can choose how they die, or if he wants to achieve a sort of, immortal legend similar to Whitebeard or Odin and ensure that he is never forgotten, or if he simply wants to prove he is greater than them by having a death that tops theirs. So, no matter what, however, the point is that Kaido's desire for a grand death, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, at least as we've seen so far. Like, Kaido saw how men, as my understanding so far is that Kaido saw how men greater than him went out, and his only takeaway was that they went out the right way. However, for Roger, for Whitebeard, for Odin, they went out the way they did, not simply for the sake of having a grand death. they each wanted to achieve something with their deaths, right? Like Roger couldn't do anything with One Piece, but he chose to use his death to start a new era that would lead to someone being able to accomplish what he could not. Whitebeard chose to go out in a way that would build on Roger's legacy and bring in a new era on his own way. Odin died in a way that won back the hearts of the people of Wano, and is the reason that so many to this day are still willing to fight in the name of Odin. So all these great men died with the intent to leave behind a powerful will for a powerful cause, which inherently made their deaths grand. Kaido, on the other hand, he wants a grand death simply for the sake of having a grand death. It's a surface level understanding of a noble concept, and he's in a way honestly kind of similar to, Big Mom's desire for a world where all races live together peacefully and literally can see eye to eye. It's her misunderstanding of Mother Carmel's vision. And so all of this is to say that this desire for a grand death cannot, should not, will not ever happen for Kaido. Why? Because he's a villain, right? His dream, which is a misguided dream based on a flawed understanding of the greatness of others, it's never meant to come true. That is the case with every single One Piece villain. They're not meant to achieve their goals. They all have strong desires and warped philosophies behind them. That doesn't mean they're ever going to get what they want, because they shouldn't get what they want. It's the same way Doflamingo wants to see the world nobles fall. That's good, and that's going to happen, but he's never going to be the one to do it, because he doesn't deserve it. It's the same way with Big Mom wanting equality for all races. It's the same way with Hordy wanting fishmen to rise to the surface. It's the same with all of these guys who want to be Pirate King. Antagonists all have deep-seated desires, but they're never supposed to get what they want, at least in One Piece. Oda even spells it out for us that Luffy very specifically does not kill, because it's more painful for the villains to see their dreams fall apart and have to live with that failure. So in Kaido's case, the villain whose dream is literally to die, for him it's pretty much doubly confirmed that Luffy is never ever ever going to kill this guy. No one is going to kill him, because that's not what the antagonists in this series deserve. They don't deserve to get what they want, they're supposed to see their dreams shattered. So Kaido, right, the guy who enslaves countries, he kills crews, he tortures innocent people, he uses chemical weapons. Oda's never going to give this guy the grand death that he craves that would allow him to join the ranks of Roger, of Whitebeard, and Odin. That's the point. And even if you think that Kaido is somehow an exception to the villain rule, then the fact that his desire for a grand death comes from such a shallow place, of simply wanting a grand death for the sake of a grand death without understanding what that actually means and what it meant in the context of those that died before him, then that alone should tell you that he doesn't deserve to die in a great war, because no matter what, if Kaido got to die in the Wano War, the fact is he will have gotten what he wanted, which would be starting a great war and dying in it. Just like Whitebeard. It wouldn't matter who kills Kaido. It could be Luffy, it could be Zoro, it could be Blackbeard swooping in for a sneak attack at the end. Doesn't matter, it doesn't change the fact that it would be a win for Kaido, because he would be dying in the world's greatest war that he started. It's the same way it didn't matter who killed Whitebeard, like who cares which was the last gunshot that got him. He still got to go out on his terms, on the battlefield that he chose, in the battle he created, the greatest battle of the era. It makes no sense to give Kaido such a satisfying storyline where he gets to just start a great war, and then either win and be satisfied because he got One Piece, or die and still be happy because he got to copy Whitebeard, but go out in an even bigger war. Literally the only route for Kaido that makes sense is the route where he starts this great war, but he doesn't get to win, and he doesn't get to die in it either. It's what we've seen Luffy do over and over again, which is beat the villain, and then let them live with their dream going unfulfilled. And an interesting idea that I've seen floated by other people is that Luffy is actually destined to, in a way, achieve the dreams of every villain that he beats, which is sort of like an added punishment for said villains. Such as, he's going to get to become Pirate King, which so many of his enemies fail to do. He will very possibly actually create a world where all races are equal, like Big Mom kind of failed to do. He's going to be able to bring the fishmen to the surface, like Hordy failed to do. He's going to facilitate helping taking down the world nobles, like Doflamingo failed to do, and so on. So in Kaido's case, Luffy is likely to defeat Kaido in a way that crushes both of Kaido's ambitions, which is first preventing Kaido from getting One Piece, but also beating Kaido without killing him in the war so he doesn't get to die on his own terms either. And instead, by the end of the story, Luffy will most certainly achieve very likely at least achieve both of Kaido's dreams, which is getting the One Piece, and on top of that, based on Luffy's quotes, I wouldn't be surprised if Luffy got to choose the terms of his death in a way that will forever be remembered. taking Kaido's other dream as well. And so all that is to say that there is a great deal of meaning to how you die in One Piece, and that it's important to understand that the ultimate defeat for Kaido would be this great war breaking out and him coming out defeated, but still alive, so left to be forgotten. So if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, share, and subscribe, and you can support me on Patreon to get my extended thoughts on this topic and all future topics. Talk to y'all later.